All right, so first things first, let's talk about quarterbacks. These aren't guys that I think that can be long-term solutions to your team. These are all just streaming options. I got three for you this week. Number one, Daniel Jones. Now, he's going to be the top picked up quarterback this week. A lot of people are going to, pick him up to be their full-time starter. So if you don't have a higher waiver priority, you might not be able to get him. But I think he's got a phenomenal matchup coming up against the Redskins, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL against quarterbacks. But after that, he's got a couple of really bad matchups in a row. He plays the Vikings and the Patriots. So don't pick him up expecting him to be your long-term quarterback solution. He's a guy that you can start for 1 week next week. But I expect him to have a big day next week after what he did last week against the Buccaneers, which in my mind is a much better defense than the Redskins. I can see him putting up some quality fantasy numbers next week against the Redskins. The next streaming option I'm going to talk about is Jacoby Brissett. He takes on the Raiders, and he's taking them on in Indianapolis, so he's going to have home field advantage on his side. Jacoby Brissett is clearly a franchise-level quarterback, clearly a legitimate NFL starter, and he's taking on the Raiders, who are not a very good defensive football team this week. And, Jacoby Brissett last week didn't even have an incompletion until damn near the end of the second quarter. This guy is really good at home. He's got some offensive playmakers around him, some good safety blankets underneath. Jack Doyle, Eric Ebron, Naheem Hines, good receivers on the outside, even without T.Y. Hilton there. I love Jacoby Brissett this week. Now, my third option for a streaming quarterback this week is Andy Dalton. Now, you might have watched Andy Dalton play the last 2 weeks and think that, he's the same old Andy Dalton. He had a great week one, but, he's just an average quarterback. I would disagree with that. I'd push back on that a little bit. I think the Niners have an extremely underrated defense. I've already talked about how much I like the Niners this year. And then the Bills have a phenomenal defense. It's a very difficult defense to look good against. And the fact is that through 3 weeks, Andy Dalton right now is the QB 11. And his next two matchups are pretty favorable matchups. Next week, he plays the Steelers, who do have a really good pass rush and a pretty decent defense. But I think he's a top 15 play against the Steelers next week. And the nice thing about picking up Andy Dalton is that if you're looking at if you're a quarterback streaming type of fantasy player, is that the week after, so he's got the Steelers this upcoming week. The week after, he's got the Cardinals, which is a cakewalk of a matchup. He'll be a top 10 quarterback against the Cardinals for sure. Particularly the Cardinals have a good offense themselves, so they're going to be dynamic trying to run the score up. The Bengals are going to have to try to keep pace. And I think in that Zach Taylor offense, I really think that the Bengals have high upside as an offense there. Andy Dalton is a quality play for the next 2 weeks. All right, now looking at running back, the first guy that I have listed here is a potential league winner. I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but Darrell Williams, Kansas City Chiefs running back. If I was running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, I would be a potential league winner. I can't run a 6-second 40 or even do one rep on the bench press, but anybody playing running back for the Kansas City Chiefs is a high-level potential player. If Darrell Williams can usurp that number one running back role, which is a real possibility right now with Damian Williams being ruled out with a knee, who knows if he's going to play next week. LaShawn McCoy has a banged up ankle. We're only 3 weeks into the season and these guys are super banged up already. Darrell Williams could inherit that number one running back role on the team. Even if he doesn't, he's going to have a role in some capacity with those two guys banged up. They're just not going to be able to go full time. And if they are going, they're not going to be able to go as hard as you would like them to go. That is Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy that I'm talking about. So Darrell Williams is in line to have some kind of a role no matter what. If he ends up being that number one running back in Kansas City, he could be a legitimate league winner for you. He could be don't even think about it, RB2, maybe even RB1 play, week in and week out. If you can get this guy off a waiver wire, that could be a just set it and forget it type of player in your fantasy lineup. I mean, that's league winning potential. Now, the next guy I'm going to talk about is Wayne Gallman. He seems like he's in line to take over the number one running back spot for the Giants, which is not nearly as coveted of a spot as the Chiefs' number one running back, which is why I like Darrell Williams so much more. Plus, Saquon is going to come back in several weeks at time. The report isn't necessarily out right now for how many weeks, but he's going to be out for the next several weeks, Saquon. So Wayne Gallman's in line for the next, 4, 5, 6 weeks, let's say, to be the number one back there in New York. Like I was saying, not as coveted of a position, but when they have got good matchups like they do in this upcoming week against the Redskins, I think Wayne Gallman's a solid flex play this upcoming week. Maybe even an RB2 if you're not super strong at running back. And then, they've got a couple of bad matchups, but in week 7, they take on the Cardinals. He could be another solid flex play in week 7. Wayne Gallman, Saquon probably won't be back by then, I would suspect. Wayne Gallman is the kind of guy that you can go out and get, and he can give you some flex value for the next little while, especially if you are a Barkley owner. Wayne Gallman is a solid guy to go out there and get. Darrell Williams should be the number one waiver priority of the week, like hands down. If you've got a high waiver, definitely go for Darrell Williams. But if you don't have a high waiver, if you're not in the top 3 waivers, you might be safe to assume that somebody else is going to get Williams if your league is astute at all. Your league mates are astute at all, I should say. And in that case, Gallman might be the guy to target. But either way, Gallman is a solid flex play next week, so you should consider getting him. Now, looking at the wide receiver position, like every week somebody booms at wide receiver that isn't an owned player. So there's so many guys that you could put in these spots. I'm just going to talk about a few of them. Number 1, Phillip Dorsett. I think he's been the most consistent wide receiver on the Patriots. If you watch their games, he's been the most consistent Patriots wide receiver. AB's gone, good riddance. Julian Edelman has the chest injury. Even if he does play, like he does underneath routes over the middle with a bad chest like that. Like, it's going to be rough for him. He's not going to be nearly the same player that he usually is. That's my opinion, at least. Edelman's a freak. Maybe he can do it, but I think he's going to be severely diminished. Josh Gordon's a little bit banged up as well in his own right. Plus, now that AB is gone, Gordon is always going to see the top cornerback on the other team or going to be seeing double coverage, which means that Phillip Dorsett is always going to have favorable defensive matchups looking at him. He's always going to be looking at the second best corner or, be looking at single coverage all the time. So he's going to have a lot of opportunity to get open. And I think it's pretty clear that he's got a rapport with Tom Brady already. And if he is in line right now to get more targets with Edelman and Gordon in their current situations, I think the rapport with Brady is just going to continue to build. I love Dorsett as a guy that you can pick up. If you can go get him, I think that he's a consistent play for like the rest of the year. Like, he's a consistent flex play type of a thing. I think he'll finish the year as a top 36 wide receiver. To get that kind of a player off the waiver wire is just insanity. Go out and get Phillip Dorsett. The next guy I want to talk about is former Dolphin guy I really like, Kenny Stills. He's the wide receiver 2 that we've all been dreaming of appearing in for the Houston Texans. He's the wide receiver 2 that the Houston Texans need and deserve. DeAndre Hopkins is far and away the number 1 wide receiver on that team. Maybe the best wide receiver in the league. For sure, top 5 in the league. So like I was saying with Josh Gordon, but even more so, DeAndre Hopkins is always taking the top coverage. He's always taking the top cornerback, double coverage, whatever teams can do to stop him, they're going to try to do, which means that Kenny Stills or whoever's playing that wide receiver 2 role on Houston is going to see a lot of favorable looks, a lot of favorable matchups. Kenny Stills has only been there for a few weeks. He got traded from the Dolphins right before the season, the regular season began, and he's already being targeted by Deshaun Watson like a lot. Will Fuller's the deep guy. We all were hoping that Kiki QT would be the guy to be the wide receiver 2 in Houston. I think it's very evident right now that Kenny Stills is going to be that guy. So he's got a very consistent target floor, being the wide receiver 2 on a pretty good offense there. with Deshaun Jackson, very good quarterback, and DeAndre Hopkins just commanding an immense amount of coverage on whatever side of the field he's on. Kenny Stills is going to be a very consistent fantasy player, and he's hardly owned as well. He's a guy that you can put him on your team. He's a phenomenal bench depth player. You can probably get him into your starting lineup, particularly during the bye weeks. He's going to be a great guy to have in your starting lineup, and he might even work his way into being a consistent starter for you. I love Kenny Stills. Go out and grab him too. The next guy I want to talk about is Paris Campbell. He's a rookie wide receiver, and if you don't know his name yet, you're going to know it soon because he's about to pop off here for the Indianapolis Colts. He's bigger and more athletic than T.Y. Hilton, and T.Y. is obviously got that quad injury. They seem pretty optimistic about his outlook, which means that he's going to be playing through that quad injury likely. He's still going to be drawing the top coverage, like I was talking about, ad nauseum with Gordon and with Hopkins. So Hilton's going to be that guy drawing the top coverage. Meanwhile, Paris Campbell's even more athletic. He's a bigger guy. And he's going to be seeing the less aggressive coverage on his side of the field. Brissett's already starting to look to him more and more. He's already starting to get more snaps out there on the Colts offense. Brissett's just getting more comfortable. He's clearly a good quarterback, accurate quarterback. Paris Campbell's a sneaky guy that provides good depth for your team, and he could also become a consistent starter very, very soon. So you can get him right now, and he's not necessarily a guy that you're going to plug into your starting lineup next week, but you want to get him now before he becomes one of the hottest, most coveted players out there. Now, the last wide receiver I'm going to talk about is Golden Tate. Just check your waiver wire. Check to see if Golden Tate is available. He shouldn't be. If he is, go ahead and grab him right now and stash him because this week coming up, week 4, is the last week on his suspension. After that, he is going to become the number 1 wide receiver in this Giants offense. And as we just saw with Daniel Jones last week, this Giants offense is probably going to be more competent than they have been in the past. Getting a number 1 wide receiver on any team, no matter how bad that team is off of the waiver wire is just ridiculous. So he shouldn't be available in your league, but check right now. Check to see if Golden Tate's available, because to get a wide receiver 1 for a team off of the waiver wire is just criminal. And you have to punish your league mates for not being adept enough of players to anticipate the suspension ending and going out and getting them themselves. Golden Tate is going to be a really good safety blanket for Daniel Jones. Golden Tate likes to run these underneath routes. He's a great slot receiver, which young quarterbacks love. Evan Ingram and Golden Tate are going to be the safety blankets for Daniel Jones all season long. And Daniel Jones looks very competent at quarterback. We've only seen one game out of him, so you don't want to overblow it. But I think Golden Tate is going to have tremendous value. And the fact is that he's the best wide receiver on that team. He's the number 1 wide receiver on that team. To get a number 1 wide receiver for any team off of the waiver wire is criminal. Check the waiver wire to see if you can get Golden Tate. A tight end, I'm not going to go into tight end streamers. You can figure that stuff out for yourself, or check whatever your favorite fantasy football experts have to say about streamers. There's one guy I do want to talk about though, and he's a potential every week starter, which is what intrigues me about him. He's not a guy that you're going to be able to get and guaranteed he's going to be an every week starter, but this guy, Dawson Knox, he's a rookie tight end for the Bills. And the Bills' starting tight end, Tyler Kroft, was injured, so Dawson Knox got the start, and he got targeted a bunch. He had a really, really productive day. Josh Allen seemed to like him. He had a big play, 49-yard play. He had a touchdown. Dawson Knox is a potential every week starter, and there's very, very few of those at the tight end position. So go out there and grab him now, because if he has a big week against the Patriots next week, everybody's going to want to get him. And if he has a big week against the Patriots next week, I would say that his chances of taking over that starting job permanently, even when Tyler Kroft gets healthy, are very, very likely. So, go out there, get Dawson Knox. I'm not saying start him against the Patriots, but bench him. See how he does next week against the Patriots. See how this position ends up playing out for them, with Tyler Kroft coming back from injury and everything. And, just monitor the situation. Because if you can get a guy that you can just plug into your tight end position every week, I mean, there's very few players in the league, Kittle, Kelsey, Ertz, like that. Those are really the only guys that I feel are like guaranteed you can start them every week. You don't even have to think about it type of guys. If Dawson Knox could get, upwards, I don't think he's got anywhere near the potential of those top 3 guys, but he might have potential to be, a good safety blanket for Josh Allen. Josh Allen might like to go to this guy a lot. He'd like to go to him a lot in the 1 week sample size that we've seen so far. So go out there and get Dawson Knox. Just put him on the bench. Roster him for a couple of weeks. If he doesn't have another big week in the next 2 weeks or so, you can just drop him. No harm, no foul. You can probably get him with one of, your second, third, or fourth waiver. You don't have to spend your top first waiver on the guy. You can get him with one of your later waivers. Just stash him on the bench, and you might end up getting a tight end that you can start every week. All right, guys, we're going to end this with just 3 DSTs that are great streaming options for the week. I'm not going to go too much into detail. Just the Falcons versus the Titans. They're a good DST this week. Titans are a horrible offense, horrid offense. I talked about it a lot in my bets of the week. The Falcons at home, they've got a pretty good defense. Love the Falcons D. Chargers versus the Dolphins. Anybody versus the Dolphins is going to be a great DST play. Go out there and get the Chargers. The great thing about both these defenses is that they're very seldom owned. So you have a good chance of being able to get one of these defenses. And the last one is the Rams. They're playing the Bucs. Jameis Winston is an interception machine. The Rams defense is very talented. I didn't even realize how many just A-plus players they had on that defense. I knew they had a lot of great players, Talib, Marcus Peters, Aaron Donald, but then it's like, oh wow, they've got Clay Matthews. It's just like they have so many playmakers on that defense. Tampa Bay is not that good. I think that they're going to be able to shred Tampa Bay. So those are my 3 DST streamers for the week. They're, like I said, the great thing about all of those defenses is that they're all very seldom owned. You have a very good chance of in your league that at least one of those defenses, I should say, are going to be available to you. And likely all 3 are going to be available. So you're going to have your pick of the litter. So those are my top DST streamers of the week. And that does it for Fantasy Talk.